Hello folks, how's it going? We are on Friday, that means we're on the way down to the weekend. Everything's going alright in your life, I hope, as we move on to some more hobby nightmares, just to come down onto the weekend in a nice and steady manner, shall we say. Alrighty, let's get in there with our first one of the day. It is Feels Friday, by the way, so I know we had a heavy one on Wednesday, so today is going to be a bit more of a light-hearted one, or a bit more of a positive one, which is good. So, our first hobby nightmare comes from David. Alright, he says, "Greetings North, it's totally okay to call me David, not Dave, that's my dad, okay? Hopefully, this gets to you in between your busy work schedule and near daily uploads, which I appreciate and enjoy while working. Cheers, man. This isn't a nightmare, but an inspiring story, probably best suited for Feels Good Friday." Well, here we go. It's here. It's about how I experienced a hobby dad who I still think about to this day. This happened when I was around 19 years of age, and now I'm 31, which goes to show how much of an impact this had on me. It was a Friday night, and myself and two friends were heading over to our local shop to play some Warhammer. It was busier than usual, so there was only one table left to play on, so I opted to sit out and let my friends play while I watched them wander around the store. Not too long into their setup, the store owner came to the Warhammer part of the store. We had our own back room, and asked if anybody would like to play in a two-headed giant Magic the Gathering draft event, as they had a player not show up and needed one more to make it even. There were no takers. The owner came up to me and asked again because he knew I used to play Magic. Then said he'll waive the entry fee if I did so. Now, at this point, I had not played Magic in about 3 years since switching to Warhammer, but the itch to have my time occupied, along with free shiny cardboard being dangled on a stick in front of me, was enough for me to say yes, and boy, did I not regret it. Since the format was a two-headed giant, you play with a partner with a shared life total. So, I was going to be playing with a stranger whose original partner couldn't make it. I was a lot more shy back then, so I was a bit nervous, of course, especially with not knowing what kind of personality my partner was going to have. When it comes to trading card games, people can get a little intense. I wish I could remember his name, but alas, I've forgotten it. Most likely that night, as I am horrible with names. Okay, that's fine. So we'll just call him Steve. Alright, I'm going to take a quick drink. Alright. I sit down with him and introduce myself. I tell him that I haven't played in years and don't even know what cards are in the set. But he reassures me that it's all good and he's just there to have fun, and I can ask him any questions without hesitation. This gives me a huge relief, as he made me feel comfortable rather than him being annoyed to be paired with a bit of a noob. The draft begins, and since it's two-headed giant, we draft 6 packs, but are allowed to discuss with our partner deck building strategies. We of course don't want to let our opponents know what we are planning, so we managed to come up with a quick set of code words for picking and choosing. This was great fun. We clicked instantly. Once all the cards were drafted, we built our decks and talked strategy. Then proceeds to be one of the most fun card gaming nights I've ever had. We further developed our code word language for discussing strategy in front of our opponents, cheered each other on during the highs and encouraged each other during the lows. In our final round, we had opponents who we were not very happy with. Well, how happy we were. What? Sorry. They kept telling us to hurry up if we discussed anything, and said that had the most sour-looking faces I've ever seen on a person's face, even when they were winning. While we did take a little extra time, because I didn't know every card off by heart, we were always done with our games within the time limit. In the end, we managed 5th place out of 12 teams, which we were ecstatic about. We said our goodbyes and got our prize packs. With hindsight, I wish I'd just given them to him as I didn't play, but young goblin brains saw packs to rip, so I picked them up. That night was so much fun, and I still think of this every day now and then. I never saw this guy again, sadly, and I wonder if he still remembers that night. I now have stopped playing Warhammer, but I've recently gotten back into trading card games. I now play Star Wars Unlimited, and any time we have someone new show up to try the game, I always remember Steve. I make everybody feel included and make sure they know what to do with no questions asked, and that no questions they can ask me are truly stupid. I will teach anybody to play that wants to learn, and I never get angry with anybody and keep a positive attitude, even when I lose every game, 3 weeks in a row. I've become an anchor at my store, and even the staff are appreciative of me helping him run and judge events every week. I guess in conclusion, I just wanted to show proof that hobby dads are important and can have a long-lasting effect on someone, even with one night's worth of interaction. Thank you again, North, for hosting a platform that can allow these types of stories to be heard. Cheers, David. Yeah, I mean, that is a really cool story, man, because not only did he make you feel like you were a part of the group, you know, it would have been so easy for him to get annoyed. Again, yeah, he's playing with a noob sort of a thing. But this is the kind of attitude you want in your hobby, do you know what I mean? And I don't know if anybody else feels that way, but I've often felt that when I'm sitting on a train or a bus or whatever, and I'm thinking, and I think back to an interaction I would have had with somebody years ago, and I do wonder if they're like, oh, I wonder if they remember me, or I wonder if they remember, you know, that random night or whatever. So yeah, I get that completely. Absolutely. Brilliant stuff. Alright, let's move on to Dagaz. Alright, Dagaz. How's it going, mate? He says, hi, North. My name is quite rare, so please call me by my internet name, Dagaz. I'm a 30-year-old male from the Netherlands. If my English is a bit off, please say how and what can be improved. I love criticism generally. It mostly improves life when somebody genuinely gives you advice. This is not the usual hobby nightmare situation, because my nightmare was my life. But since jumping back into the Warhammer hobby and the discovery of your channel, these things turn my life around. Dude, okay, people have said this before, right? Like, this dinky little YouTube channel is not turning your life around, right? You're turning your life around. You know what I mean? You're watching the channel and getting stuff out of it, that's great, you know? But don't give the channel props that doesn't deserve. It's you, mate. Right? You decided to turn your life around. The channel may have helped. It may have been the scaffolding around... Right, do you know when you put the scaffolding around the house to build it, right? Well, there's still builders building the house, right? All this channel is part of the scaffolding. You're the builder. You're the person actually building the house. So, you know, take credit where credit is due. My mental health stabilised. My vision on a future worth living shifted almost 180 after living in several years of mental darkness. Can relate. As you mentioned before, this hobby heals people. Painting gave me the peace in mind to finally meditate. I'm a high-functioning autistic dude. I'm super social and make clear eye contact, so nobody can tell I'm autistic most of the time, but my head is quite entangled from time to time. But let's start at when the hobby started for me. Back in 2005-2006, the Battle for Skull Pass starter set came out. I was 10 or 11 years old, an extreme nerd about history, and my World War II Knights Roman Empire Star Wars buddies introduced me into Warhammer Fantasy with showing me this Warhammer Fantasy starter box. Night Goblins versus Dwarfs, 80 plus models for €80. So I forced my loving mother to give me this for my birthday. Several years later, I'm around 15-16 years old, I rediscovered the hobby, but this time I was all about Space Marines. New starter set and several other additional units for my Blood Ravens were bought and painted. I was busy with females and weed at the time, so the hobby was just me. Nobody I knew I was into that stuff. At 20 years old, I suffered my first real autistic burnout. Work, a stressful private situation, and simply bad luck resulted in burnout for me. I was losing my normal life functional abilities as a result. I couldn't read my emails. I freaked out when my phone rang. Dude, I do that. Whenever my phone goes off, I always assume it's bad news. Do you know, even when I get a knock at the door, I assume, like, oh god, what is this? Right? If I'm sleeping at, like, you know, 8, 9 in the morning, somebody knocks on the door, quite often I will just leave it. Because I'm thinking it can only be bad news, right? I don't know why I think that. Does anybody else do that? I don't know why I do that. I just tend to. Anyway, let me jump on with the rest of this hobby nightmare. Did I loop this thing? Yeah, I did. Good. Right. I freaked out when my phone rang. Generally, normal stuff was impossible for me. Luckily, I had an amazing girlfriend and she really gave me time, help and love to get back up again. Once again, I turned to Warhammer Fantasy. My unconscious self steered me into the Games Workshop store and I bought a Chaos Warriors box and a few brushes and some paint. just before Age of Sigmar happened. He calls it Age of Shitmar, so I know how he feels. In hindsight, I can see how the hobby made me untangle my brain and how everything cleared up after that. Now, 30 years old, said girlfriend left me a couple of years ago. She wanted to travel the world and fuck Australian boys, I guess. We lived together for 6 years by that point. It utterly broke me. Dude, okay. This is going to sound really, really weird. But I've had mates that this has happened to. They're doing you a favour, man. They really are. Like, if they prioritise going on a trip and finding themselves, which usually means finding more dick, if that's what they're doing, then, dude, cut them loose. Right? Bye. Bye. Right? Being devastated about it is akin to having a weight wrapped around your neck while you're trying to climb a cliff, cutting the weight loose and then missing the weight. Right? Nah. Get rid. I started to work 6 days a week. I'm a gardener and landscaper, and I make pavements. When work wasn't enough to kill the pain, I started using the white demolisher from South America. Not huge quantities, just a few beers and a line when I was done. I just couldn't handle the pain and rejections from society during COVID. I felt alienated and betrayed by everybody, including the government and Games Workshop. Age of Shitmar, and after that, the meditations and manipulations broke my soul. The mandate, and manipulation broke my soul even further. This nice young man started to grow bitter and hateful, and my smile turned into a frown. My frown turned my environment against me. What you send out is what you will receive and all that. A few years ago, I collapsed. I couldn't work or socialise anymore. I was horrible. I felt depressed and overwhelmed by life. Somehow, I convinced myself to quit using. My life sucked so much. I might as well quit. That helped a little bit. My brain fog went away, but with it I lost my calmness and escapism. My mind turned sharp. I recognised patterns. I saw only all that's bad and everything going wrong in life. I turned into the far-right person society told me that I was. A non-left, white, blonde, blue-eyed male with an opinion. Yeah, that sucked. I could argue with great arguments and win. I joined White Lives Matter and became an activist. I was not the dumb ist with unfounded hatred. I was the guy recruiting people to stand up for their responsibility towards the future of my land. But it made me even more depressed. Yeah, dude, I'm going to be honest with you, right? Nearly everybody that I know who's ever fallen down this rabbit hole is replacing some emptiness that's in their soul with something else, right? I've said it before on the channel, like, if you start leaning into quite extreme political stylings and leanings and philosophies, you're doing that most of the time to cover up a massive hole in your chest, like in your self, in your personage, right? Never let a political leaning form your entire personality. It's not good, right? Because you're building a house on sand, and eventually it's going to collapse, you know? But it made me even more depressed. Yeah, I'm guessing it did, mate, because you're surrounding yourself with constant negativity, yeah. So I decided to go offline and started painting my goblins and orcs from 2006. This made me meditate. This made me enthusiastic for my own lore. I'm writing little stories about my greenskin horde and their adventures. I'm meeting people to play with, people I can talk to about something other than politics and the degradation of life in the West. Just jolly old nerds getting back into the old world. I love my transition from my hateful mindset to this enthusiastic inner child. I won't bother Warhammer people with my opinions about geopolitics or identity politics. If somebody starts talking extreme left-wing stuff, I just ignore them or start talking about orc lore. I'm not a hateful person. I just need a good hobby and some meditation sometimes. I hope I can rewind my brain from all this negativity and just enjoy life some more. Please keep up the good work. You feel like a mate to me, and your videos mean a lot to people like me, including me. With gratitude, Dagaz. Okay, you did say that you've fallen down that rabbit hole, and you mentioned here that you've. I'm not gonna read it all out, mate. Don't worry. But you mentioned that I'm of Jewish descent. I'm not. right? I went through the conversion process when I was in the States because I was getting married, right? That's basically what that is. so don't worry about anything like that. You don't offend me with choices that you've made in life. What you've done, mate, is you've gone outside and you've touched grass. Is what you've done. Like quite literally, you've gone outside. You've got your models together. You've stayed out of it. I would deprogram that brain of yours, mate. I would take a massive step back from everything that you're doing in terms of, getting involved with people and not everything needs to be sit down talk around a fire about how things are bad in the West. The more you sit in that and you put that out into the world, as you just said, what you put out into the world, you get back, right? So if you're sitting there bemoaning the fact that the West has fallen and this and that and the other, there comes a time, even on my YouTube feed, dude, where, maybe I agree with some of the things that you say, maybe I disagree with some of the things that you say. But the amount of things where I see in my YouTube feed where I'm just like, oh my god. No, I'm not up for this today, right? I'm not up for going down this rabbit hole today. I'm sorry, right? I unplugged from that a long time ago, and my life was better for it. All you're doing in hating somebody who doesn't know that you hate them, right? Or, letting it get to you that, things in the world aren't all sunshine and rainbows all the time, right? All you're doing is, because you've upset me, I'm going to set fire to myself. Right? Imagine somebody that you really hate. Yeah? Okay? And because they've upset you, because, they've annoyed you, they've turned the other way. They can't see you, but you set fire to yourself in protest. Who are you hurting? You. They don't know you exist. Right? The world doesn't care. And by the way, I used to love something that Bill Burr used to say, I mean he's gone a bit off the deep end now these days. He's not that funny anymore. But back in the day, when Trump first got elected in 2016, I think it was, 2016, he was saying, like, I think he was on Conan O'Brien or something, and he said, "Yeah, okay, he got elected. Okay, what's changed? What's changed? Like, nothing's going to change. They're all the same person." And he was kind of right, you know what I mean? Like, if just, all the hysteria that you get from politics and stuff, dude, nothing changes. They're a bag of rats. They're all the same. Especially in the UK. There's no difference. They're just the same, You may as well be voting on what colour car you want of the same make. It's the same car underneath, right? So don't let it annoy you. Go about your life. What's really going to change about your life? Live your life, man. And peace is an amazing form of protest, right? Sitting in your own peace, creating your own peace is an amazing form of protest. If you don't like the way the world's going, if it's getting right on your nerves, getting right over you, then sit back and choose to be at peace. Just, no, I'm not doing this. I'm unplugging from this, right? I'm going to live my life. I'm going to sort my job out, sort my kids out, whatever needs doing, I'll do. And then I'm going to play with my orcs. And that's going to be my day today, alright? Best thing to do, in my opinion. Anyway, Kiwi Dan is back, folks, with a long-awaited Hobby Nightmare submission. He sent this in November, and I didn't have the time to... Well, no, I didn't. Not that I didn't have the time to read it. It just got lost in the shuffle. So, I'm going to have a quick drink, and then we're going to get into Kiwi Dan's Hobby Nightmare. One sec. There we go. Right. Okie dokie. The thin blood that couldn't. Alrighty, let's jump in. He says, "Good Arvo North. Kiwi Dan, aka another bloody Kiwi on your Discord, writing about the reason why I never allow players to be thin bloods in my current and future chronicles of Vampire the Masquerade. Grab a mug of your favourite tea or top up your vodka, we're going deep. Will be a touch of preamble though. Feel free to cut what you need to, as this comes out at about 5 pages. Okay, it's not that long. It's fine. I'm an older, grumpy dude. I remember the trenchcoat kids loudly arguing at the game store over which clan or sept was the best, what World of Darkness system was the best, or rambling about their katana-wielding, trenchcoat-wielding Sabbat characters and what they were going to do in the next gaming session. I dabbled a bit back then in the hobby, but was never really a fan of World of Darkness or Vampire the Masquerade, as I had other teenage boys. I had things other teenage boys had on their mind, aka Magic the Gathering, beer, and the female form. There was one girl that asked me to Dungeon Master for her. Looking back in hindsight, I shouldn't have been so naive and showed up to hers with my D&D books and dice, but there we go. Dude, that's a story I want to hear. Until a few years ago, I had dabbled on and off with role-playing, joining and running multiple games for multiple systems, but thanks to work, World of Warcraft, and unclehood, I didn't really stick to it. I had been listening to Matthew Dawkins, an arrogant prat but a compelling writer, for years. His various explanations of the clans and werewolf tribes are always fascinating. This caused the algorithm gods of YouTube to start showing LA by Night in my suggested videos. After watching Jason Carl spin a wonderful narrative, despite one of the players, we both know who, I won't mention names to avoid triggering you, I was hooked again, and I wanted to run a game. I just had to run a game. For the last year, I'd been on my Australian friend/guildmates Discord server that was more of a TTRPG oriented than Warcraft focused. We'd played a couple of D&D campaigns, some went well, some fell a little flat, but all were very fun. I toddled my backside off to a friendly local game store, grabbed the base rules, Camarilla and Anarch books for around $350. Living in the absolute boondocks of the world has its costs. This time literally. Reading the rules on the train home, I messaged my Discord server showing off my latest acquisition and inquiring if anybody was keen on playing. My friend's partner, Amanda, immediately shot up her figurative hand, as did a couple of other members of the Discord. I hastily wrote up a short one-shot focusing on the tracking down of a ritualistic murderer in Moscow. The night of the game arrived. All players were on time, and I ran them through character creation. We got into the story starting in Paris for 3 of them, then moving on to Moscow and introducing Amanda's character to the coterie. They followed some rules and some clues, met some other kindred and eventually tracked down a ritual site in a park. The site was hidden by a magical geometric sign which hid the altar that was effectively in plain sight. They tampered with the sacrificial altar, which alerted the mortal ritualist, and after a few rounds of combat and the introduction of a 0.50 caliber pistol, ended the conflict bloodily in the coterie's favour. At the end of the night, the murderer was caught, the masquerade was safe, but the question remained: how did this mortal learn blood sorcery, and what was with the spiral tattooed on his chest that was a precise copy of the magic used to hide the altar? We all enjoyed the night, and while it wasn't the fully dark tone that most Vampire the Masquerade games were, and tended to lean a little towards, more of what we do in the Shadows vibe than players were keen to continue. Okay, cool. I do like what we do in the Shadows. It is a bit wacky though, yeah. Not only this, but my friend had a character concept he wanted to try out. One of the other players wanted to re-roll their character, and I'd got on a PM from somebody who we will call Gary, who wanted to join, but I'd initially refused as I wasn't sure about juggling 5 players in a session. The one-shot had brought back a lot of my improv muscles and figured I could integrate 2 more players into the story quite easily, so I messaged him back. Hey, if you still have your character concept available, I have a spot for you at my table. He responded with, yeah, I do, if you don't mind if it's a thin blood, do you? To which I replied, sure, we can work with that. Big mistake on my part, as I was going to find out. The next session, planned 2 weeks later, as I needed a touch more time to familiarise myself with Moscow, drawing on the almighty powers of Google, I created a rough sketch of where I wanted my players to go, who they were going to interact with, and which antagonists would eventually step into the limelight. What I didn't anticipate was the DM I got from my friend. Is Gary playing in your game? He's kind of problematic, they said. I replied with, yeah, problematic how? He's not like racist, is he? My mate responded with, no, he's just annoying and his characters tend to be a bit extreme. I thought about it for a couple of minutes and replied, well, worst comes to worst, he dies a horrible death. My friend didn't reply. Night of the game arrived. I'd made sure Gary had access to Roll20 and his character was done. Again, we integrated the characters into the new coterie and they were given the task of finding a missing kindred. This kindred was Amanda's sire, which he'd been hunting for the last 3 months. Everything was going smoothly. Gary was behaving and interacting with the group like any normal tabletop RPG nerd, so I finished off the night, awarded them XP, then logged off. The campaign went on for the following 2 months. Again, kindred were met, fights happened, clues and lore discovered. As they came to discover, the sire had been travelling around Europe with a band, and I called that I had called Tungusta Blast. Okay. They had all been tattooed with the same spiral symbol and had been escorting him around, helping with his grisly sacrifices. While the band had been staying at a local large hotel, the coterie had broken in, with all of the players with one of the players shooting a short person through the door after their attempt to dominate them into opening it failed spectacularly. God bless bestial failures. The encounter turned incredibly bloody very quickly, and it only finished when the crying lover of the short person, also a short person, was dominated out of the hotel window, landing on a police car, spraying the police with body parts and innards. Now this is more like Vampire the Masquerade. Yeah, this is more it. I like how Vampire tends to push your characters to do really heinous things, even if you don't want them to. This was the introduction to the world of darkness that I'd really been keen on, and had the full intent to start ramping up the horror significantly. The table loved it, including my friend, who spoke to me after the session about how he felt bad about using Dominate to force somebody to end themselves. People familiar with V5 will know that Dominate doesn't really work that way outside of a specific high-ranked power, which none of my players had access to, but I ruled since the target was under emotional duress and truly loved their slaughtered lover, they would happily follow them into the afterlife. Oh my god. But I'd had a feeling that Gary was there, but not really doing anything towards contributing towards the game. He couldn't seem to make any of the most basic difficulty dice rolls. He never seemed to need to feed. Tried his hand at everything from crime to persuasion to driving, and just random things like go out to eat during the day. He had the daywalker and eat food advantages, so I snuck a look at his character sheet. Sure enough, his character was hopeless. Nothing more than a few dots in every skill. No thin blood alchemy, advantages chosen to make him basically mortal, but not and being truly good at nothing. I asked him before the next session, and he said, I wanted to make a realistic character striving for his spiritual goals, not some super monster. Well, that explained his character ambition of achieving true Faith 5, I guess. Just leaving it be, I focused on the other players' ambitions and goals, more figuring he would just plutz his way through the story. Using the power of premonition, one of the players discovered a ritual murder that was going to happen, and the coterie arrived to disrupt it, slaughtering the ritualists and setting Amanda's sire to flee once it was certain she wouldn't side with him. Sure enough, they discovered that Amanda's sire was ill and had been using the ritual murders to heal himself, and that the rite was of Sabbat origin that had been developed in the 1400s to counteract kindred carrying the plague to their victims. They tracked down her sire, who was now on his last legs, and had a tearful goodbye before the house started rocking with a sudden earthquake. Running outside, the coterie discovered a pack of flesh-shaped wolves, which promptly attacked them. Amanda's broodmate, a vampire slang for somebody who has also been embraced by the same sire, was promptly chewed to pieces while the coterie tried to escape. The problem was, Gary was supposed to make sure that didn't happen, as the broodmate had valuable information I needed to pass to the coterie. Rookie mistake on my part. I had teased earlier in the story that the hounds had been wolves stolen from the zoo, and was intended as an option to bring werewolves into the story, but not as antagonists for the coterie. The broodmate had contact details with said werewolves, which could tip the scales in the coterie's favour in the final battle. While Gary had dropped the ball as a player, I also dropped the ball as a storyteller. One of my storytelling tools is making sure players hear things via mortal news. These things might be 100% useless information, a price of wool going up for example, or they might involve breadcrumbs for the actual story at hand. Yeah, if you're a DM, that's one of the best things to do. Utilise in-universe storytelling. Like in-universe, what I like to do, if I'm running a sci-fi campaign, right, when everyone's on like a starship or something, I'll send players an email from like a corporation or from Galaxy News or something, and it'd be like, oh, this is what's been happening in the world, that kind of a thing. And they love it, especially if like sometimes I'll write emails to players in a role-playing campaign in character, so that they'll get a letter from one of the characters in the game, right? From one of the NPCs. Anyway, moving on. At this point, I had the Sabbat fully arrive on scene, expecting payment for the ritual they had traded, but there was nobody around to foot the bill. They turned Moscow into a war zone. The players travelled around, putting out fires, tracking down the Sabbat nests, making friends with the local weir folk, and the whole time Gary was doing nothing except soaking up session time with his random bullcrap. I wish I could remember what he actually did, but all I remember is it took him a heap of time and slowed down the game considerably. I really should have stepped in and did something, but really didn't want to rock the boat or have him turn around and say, I'm a daywalker, while you all asleep I kill you all except for one, and that one I try to diabolise. That was until the second to last session where his mediocre terribleness resulted in one of the player characters to get put forcibly into torpor. The players had discovered a nest of freshly turned shovelheads, and the numbers were more than they could handle, so they beat a hasty retreat to their vehicles. Gary had jumped the driver's seat, and after a series of bad dice rolls and failed to hotwire the vehicle, keys were in another player's pockets at the same time. During the time it took the PCs to clear enough breathing room, one of the players was down, whilst Gary was still fumbling with the ignition system. Since the players had racked up enough favours with the locals, this wasn't a campaign-ending thing for our trusty Brujah, as they could cash some in to get him revived, but I could sense the irritation from them as Gary had refused to buff himself with Blood Surge. You burn blood to buff your following roll, or to re-roll any failures with willpower. Yeah, that's a bit much, right? When there are actual mechanics in the game that allow him to do things, and he just chooses not to do it, I'd had enough, and while there were no rumblings amongst the group going on, at the time about this, I could just feel the eyes rolling, and that this thing was happening whenever Gary queued up his mic. The final session came. The Sabbat elders were preparing to shovelhead an entire congregation as a last resort. Thanks to the coteries' actions, they had called the local werewolves and informed them that they had tracked down the people who had stolen their kinfolk and mutated them into monsters. The werewolves were agreeing to assist as soon as possible, asking that the players stall so that they can get their claws on the thieves. So, as the coterie threw open the doors to the church, they were met by the sight of 3 elders and 2 of the Simisi, since North has issues pronouncing it properly. Jokes on everybody, Nobody knows how the heck it's pronounced. Oh my god, another one. Schlachter? Yeah? Schlachter? Yeah. Amalgamations of multiple mortals, twisted into horrid monstrosities, and the players stalled for time as the elders' offers for them to join the Sabbat were about to get refused. The pack of werewolves smashed through the windows of the church and immediately jumped on one of the elders and both the monstrosities. The combat-inclined characters went straight for the broadsword-wielding Ventru, while Gary and Amanda tried to track down the knife-toting female Malkavian who was also in that group. I asked each player to pick 2 numbers from 1 to 10 to represent who she would go for, as the Malkavians are a clan of the mentally insane. The players went around the table, picking 1 number at a time. Once all the numbers had been split up, I rolled for who the now invisible woman would attack. She was a bit of a phoebe when it came to her combat skills, but her ability to strike then vanish was strong enough to make her a serious concern. I rolled the dice, checked who was the target, and sure enough, Gary had chosen number 4. She appeared from nowhere, driving her knife into his back, knocking his health down substantially. Amanda, who had been walking on the ceiling thanks to one of her powers, opened up with her firearm, injuring the Malkavian very heavily, but not putting her out of the fight. The Malkavian promptly vanished, and I, again, rolled the dice for who she would go for. The dice came up a 10. Checking my list, I saw that it was again Gary. She stepped out of nothing, plunging the knife again into his back, inflicting serious damage. Again, Amanda took a shot at her, hitting her squarely and adding more damage to the now heavily wounded elder. Then, I checked the vanish power. I hadn't been using the rouse checks properly. You were supposed to roll 1 per use of vanish, plus 1 for the power being used. Promptly rolling another 2 rouse checks, she failed both of them, putting her at hunger 4. For people only familiar with the older system, or people unfamiliar with V5 entirely, you spend blood to do supernatural things by rolling hunger dice, and it's a coin flip on whether or not each use adds to your hunger. Characters start at 1, and the more hunger they get, the more unpredictable a kindred becomes, which can, and frequently does, involve them going into frenzy, essentially going rogue and trying to eat whoever is nearest at the time. Sure enough, the sight and smell of this now heavily bleeding thin blood drove the Malkavian into a frenzy. Losing all self-control, she pounced on him, biting deeply, knocking him into torpor and draining the last of his life. Amanda promptly dropped down from the ceiling, walked up and shot her at point blank in the back of the head while she was in the process of devouring the thin blood's soul, ending the threat too late to save poor Gary. Secretly though, I was elated. This character that I'd been doing very little was gone, and all thanks to pure chance. Gary started to complain about how it was unfair, that I should know the rules better, and I was picking on him. I put a halt to the session while I banged out a quick message, explaining that we would talk about it after the session, and he thankfully let it sit. The rest of the fight went as predicted. The Ventrue Elder did some serious damage to the other coterie mates, putting 2 of them into torpor before one of them got lucky, and hit a lucky hit in, putting him to the final death. The werewolves killed the 2 monstrosities and caused the Simitsi Elder to explode into a puddle of blood that drained away into the floor at the cost of 2 of their 5 pack members. I did a final scene where the players went back to Paris, Dublin and the UK, respectively, and called the story for now. I had plans involving a new story in a new city. Once everybody had logged off for the night, I spoke to Gary, explaining that was the way the cookie crumbles sometimes, and that if he'd chosen to play an actual vampire in a vampire game, he might have survived. He said that playing a vampire was boring. In a game called Vampire? He said that playing a vampire was boring, and that I hadn't given him enough chances to shine in the campaign, as I didn't let him roll the skills that he was good at. The skills he was good at were academics, religion, and survival. Both are very niche skills that don't really come up a lot. Shaking my head, I realised he was just not going to let the matter drop, and told him I was sorry, but that's the way the dice came out. He once again reiterated that it was unfair, and that he was the only one that died, to which I countered that 2 other coterie members who had been torpid, and if my friend hadn't gotten lucky, there would have been a solid chance at a total party kill. He sulked for a bit, and I'd had enough for the night. I promptly hung up and blocked him, and I've not heard from him since. Since then, I've run 3 Vampire the Masquerade games, all set in my home city of Wellington, and I've populated with some people I've known in my real life, and I'm currently waiting on the outcome of my 3rd game before I write a 4th game. Well, after I've had a good long stint as a player to get my DMing juices back. Thanks for reading. Keep up the stellar work, and maybe I'll write another nightmare about my adventures in tabletop role-playing games, or maybe my latest dip back into the Warhammer 40k hobby. Peace out, Kiwi Dan. P.S. Amanda drew the attached image of me during my first D&D 5e Ravenloft campaign, and every time I see it, I have a giggle. Okay. Let's have a little look-see. I don't think it's going to be completely relevant to what we're talking about here, but let's have a little look. There you go. If you wanted to see it. Alright, I'll leave it up whilst we are doing some more, one last bit of advice here for today. Okay, so, I asked this person if they wanted to be named, and they said no. So I'm not going to use any names here. So, they say, hey North, this is for the advice part of your video, so feel free to disregard if it's not the right time of day. I am actually a relatively large YouTuber in the Warhammer sphere. Well, when I say relatively large, I have over 100,000 subs, which is wonderful. The issue I am having is with negative comments. I don't get them often, but when I do, they tend to ruin my day. I obsess over them and completely lose sight of the successes my channel experiences. Knowing that there is one person or even many people out there who dislike or even hate my channel and me just makes me feel miserable. I just can't seem to get it out of my head no matter what I do. Do you get much hate? How do you deal with it? I ask because anybody who really likes Games Workshop and wants to defend them would have a bloody field day on your channel. So what do you do? Tar Muchley. First of all, yeah, I do get hate, quote unquote. Like it does happen quite a lot. Like I do get it, and it does bother me. You know, like you're not the only one, man. I think every YouTuber on this space doesn't like negative comments, right? One thing I try to keep in mind is that all comments are good for the algorithm, right? Like, and if anybody says anything on your video, YouTube doesn't see that it's good or bad. It just sees engagement. And it's like, brilliant. Your content is getting engagement. Good. We don't care what kind it is. We just care that it's engagement. So I try to keep that in mind. I very rarely get videos where like a lot of people hate on it. You know, I get a few. Like earlier on this week was a bit of a rough one because we had a Hobby Nightmare that kind of went sideways, and that was getting a lot of negativity, not towards me, but towards the nightmare in question, which sucked. You know, it sucks when that happens. But it does grind you down. Like you do start to feel kind of, you know, oh my god, I need to take a step back, and I advise you to do that. You know, especially if you've got like a lot of subscribers. My channel's a grind channel, right? So we do 5 videos a week, and 1 stream a week too. And mainly because it's been built that way, because there are lots of Hobby Nightmares to get through. I'd never get through them all if I didn't do it, you know, if I didn't do it 5 times a week. So, you know, I need to stay on the grind. So I get this all the time. I don't really get to take a break, but I do on like Saturdays, or there are some times where I'll just say, do you know what, I'll record this one on the day and upload it on the day rather than being early, you know what I mean? Because I want to give myself a day just to decompress, to do nothing. I've done that before, where I've been like, you know what, I'm not doing marking any essays, I'm not doing any classes, I'm not taking anything, I'm not doing anything, I'm not doing any YouTube. There are a few days where I need to go, no, I'm not doing anything. I'm going to play some video games, I'm going to go for a run, you know, that kind of a thing. That's what I need to do, and that's what I do, right? I go away and I do other things. It is hard. It is hard at times, especially when, so I get it, like, the amount of times I read, like, oh, he's so negative and this and that, and sometimes I think, dude, you've not watched my channel. You've seen one of my videos and decided that I'm ultra negative and I hate Games Workshop and this and that. So I do get it. Like, it isn't great, but you also got to realize that that person's getting an opinion about one of your videos, and they've likely only seen one video, or maybe even 2 videos, right? And they've made up their mind on you. Having a healthy contempt for your audience. Now, please don't take that the wrong way, but having a healthy contempt for your audience is fine, in my opinion. You need to be able to separate real people from what they say online. A lot of these people are anonymous, and they can say what they want to you, you know. You've put yourself also in the public sphere, so you're going to get it. The world is filled up of many different people, and some of those people are fucking morons. So you're going to get them. You'll get them in your comment section. I've seen some really positive, non-offensive YouTube videos still get negative comments, you know. And just remember, the more success you get, so I never used to get any hate whatsoever, because my YouTube channel was relatively small, and still is relatively small, but it was much smaller back in the day. So I'd get a lot of positive feedback, and people were loving it, but there'd be one Dave, right? There'd be one guy going, gay, or, so toxic, you know, who just wants to hate on the video, right? But I can ignore them safely, because I've got these other 99 people out of 100 who really like me, right? Well, as the channel has grown, and more views have come in, that, you know, we may be getting 5 to 10,000 views on certain videos, but that also means that the Daves are also multiplying, right? That's just the nature of the beast, man. Yeah, that's what you've chosen to do. So you just need to, I don't know, not man up, but like realize it's going to happen. I completely get that it's inside your own head, and it's really, really difficult to know that there are certain people out there who just don't like you and don't like your channel and never will, right? Never, ever Google yourself if you're if you're like a 100k plus YouTuber. Even if you're my size YouTuber, don't Google yourself. It's a rabbit hole, right? Especially read nothing that's on Reddit, because most people who use Reddit are fucking smooth brains. So don't read it, don't engage with it, don't let it in, right? Realize the internet isn't fucking real, okay? None of these people would dare say this to you in real life, right? I've got Exile Fest coming up in June. I'm willing to bet my bottom dollar that if somebody is there who has this opinion about me, they won't say shit to my face, right? They'll shake my hand. They'll probably want me to sign the Yorkshire tea, right? There'll be nothing like that. They won't have the balls, right? These people don't have the balls. Like they literally would just go, I like your channel so much, right? You'll get it. You'll get it. None of these people are real. The internet allows you to be anonymous. It allows you to hide behind a screen name and say whatever you want. And some people aren't mature enough to handle that level of responsibility. And so they will watch one of your videos, decide you are this or that, and spread that around the internet because that's just how they are. Don't get me wrong, there are certain YouTubers who have earned that reputation, right? I don't think I'm one of them. I don't think I'm overly negative. I don't think I grift or anything like that, right? I have opinions. I say opinions. I give credit where credit is due, you know? I still get people saying you're overly negative on Games Workshop. Dude, if they do something good, I'll do a video on it. I've done that in the past. I've literally done... I did an entire video on why Age of Sigmar is really good. But yet, nobody seems to talk about it, right? Nobody seems to point that out. It's always, you're so toxic and you hate Games Workshop. Go fuck yourself, you fucking moron. Right? This is what I mean. You can't take them seriously. Because they don't do their research. They don't know, dude. And by the way, they're not even real people. They'd never say this shit to you in real life. Ever. I even get hatred playing fucking video games. I am stupid for doing this, by the way. But I do it because if I play it on stream, that kind of thing. But on several different games, like I use my YouTube handle, and the amount of abuse I get. But you just let it roll off your back. Just go, whatever. Right? Because you're in the public sphere and you're using your public name. There are morons out there who their entire day revolves around, I hope he sees this comment. By the way, if you're the kind of person who goes out of their way, who takes time out of their day to write a negative YouTube comment on a video that you didn't like, you need more things going on in your fucking life. You do. You need to go outside. Right? I have never, ever written a negative comment on a video, even ones that I really hate and I didn't like. I didn't even click dislike. I just don't engage with it. I go somewhere else. Because I've got better things to do with my time, dude. Why would I sit there and put negativity in the world for somebody else? I don't care that much. I don't. I move on with my day. I find something else to do. My time is precious. If you've got the time to write a negative YouTube comment, you need to reassess your life. You need to sit down and reassess how much time you've got in the day to be writing things like this. Don't get into arguments on the internet. It's not fucking worth it. Most people on here are uneducated proles who couldn't hold a candle to you in a real life argument. So why? Don't engage with it. I think, mate, what you need to do is you need to realise how of little worth, non-constructive negative feedback is. Okay? It's worth nothing. Right? It's absolutely worth nothing. It is a self-perpetuating cycle. Now, positive stuff is worth something, right? Yeah? Because if you take the time out of your day to write a positive message to somebody, you're doing something good. You're spreading positivity. You're engaging with the ideas that are in the video. Now, that's a worthwhile exercise, right? Just spreading negativity isn't. Like, literally going onto a YouTube channel and just whinging, that isn't the way to do it, right? Now, if you disagree with something that's said in a YouTube video, that's one thing. You know what I mean? But, going on a tirade about, you know, how this guy's channel is this or her channel is that. You need better things to be doing with your time, man. You really do. So, you know, don't take it seriously is my advice to you. You know, I need to take my own advice sometimes, because sometimes I let it get to me, because we're only human, right? But the way I deal with it is I recognize most of the people making these arguments, like talking shit about me, don't know me, right? They've probably seen 1 or 2 videos and made their minds up, because, you know, they don't have fucking brains. And I acknowledge it and I disregard it. Opinion, disregarded. Goodbye. Right, and that's just, I get on with my day. Right? Like, Rogan has a really good philosophy of post and ghost. Right? He posts things, doesn't watch any comments. Couldn't give a shit. Right? Now, he's in a very privileged position, because obviously he doesn't need to engage with comments because he's making so much money. We do. But you need to be able to have that sieve in your brain of like, okay, I'm letting this in, I'm not letting this in, right? I'm letting the positive in, I'm not letting the negative in. Go fuck yourself, right? Don't be blind to criticism. You know, if someone's got a point and they're respectful with it. Like, I've had emails from people saying, listen, man, like, I think your take on this is a bit off, and here's why. And we've gotten into like a back and forth email on a lunch break. And it's been really nice. And I've gone, do you know what? I've learned something there. That's cool, right? That's happened before. So don't throw away all criticism. But if you can tell it's coming from like not a place of good faith, right? As let's be honest, 90% or 95% around that of negative YouTube comments are not from a place of goodwill. Let's be honest, right? I'm not trying to blow smoke up your arse or sugarcoat it for you. That's the truth, right? Most of it is just not worth listening to. So that's what I suggest you do, right? You stop letting it get to you, because if you do, man, it's going to drive you insane. This is a really cool thing to do, YouTube. It's awesome. You get to speak to so many cool people. So don't let them ruin it for you, right? There are always... I've seen some of the most... Do you know that grandma who plays Skyrim, right? This lovely grandma who plays Skyrim. What's her name? Shirley, right? Even she gets negative trolley comments from people who just don't like her. Even she gets them. She's a lovely old lady who plays Skyrim. Most wholesome content in the world. Even she gets negative comments from fucking smooth brain morons. So, we're not going to avoid it. Especially me, right? Especially me. Some of the things I say can be quite controversial. I do shoot from the hip. I don't mince my words, right? And I never will, because, you know, go fuck yourself. Grow up here, right? I've only just realised how bad the train tracks on Ghost are. They're awful. Look at them. Anyway, yeah, so that's what I would do. Don't take it too seriously, alright? Alright, cool. I love you a long time. I will speak to you on, when are we? It'll be on Sunday now for our next live stream, where I think we are rebuilding the salamanders. So that'll be cool. Anyway, I love you a long time. Speak to you soon. Have a good one. Bye now.